So look, thanks for everybody for coming. I'm Bill. Minji and I started EOS in 2016, and we're so happy to sponsor this parody series today. So a little bit about EOS. We have been in existence for a few years, and our mission is to improve the lives of athletes through knowledge and education. And parody is something that we're super excited about. It's a new product that will be for next year, and it's going to be an online sponsorship tool for female athletes. And the need, as you all are quite well aware, are is it's needed. Women, some accounts get less than 0.5% of the $66 billion sponsorship market. So we hope to help change that. Now, the reason that we're doing these webinar series is because this is kind of our contribution to the crisis. Professional women athletes are some of those that are hardest hit during this crisis. So we offer those series in order to help you. I'm really happy today to introduce Tommy to you, who will be leading this. Tommy is an expert on Instagram. He has a number of sites, and he manages our parody site. And he has several 100,000 in each of his sites, including one that's less than a month old and already has 250,000 followers. His content is not only relevant, but he knows the details of it. He's been doing this for years now. He has done some outstanding work as a consultant for companies like MTV and Hinged. And he also is even doing stuff for not-for-profits for free, just to help out during this crisis. So I'm going to turn it over to Tommy right now and let him teach his class. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot for the introduction, Bill. I'm really happy to be here with you all today. I've been working with EOS and Parody for the past few months, and I find myself to be very aligned with their brand vision, and to be able to help out with this presentation is truly awesome, and I'm happy to be here. With that said, I want to start off just listing a few objectives that I hope we can get done today together. First is understanding how to market yourself and building your brand on Instagram. And there's a lot that goes into this, and we're gonna kind of break it down as we go through. Next is creating and updating your profile centered on what makes you interesting. So you are all female athletes who have had these careers that have been covered by news, media, press, and that means that there's a lot of stuff in a lot of content that you haven't taken advantage of yet. So we're going to kind of talk about that and how you can use that to your advantage. Next is tailoring your profile to attract influencer sponsorships. Big brands are finding people to work with on Instagram organically. So there are ways to tune up your profile and make it more likely that a representative of a brand stops by your page and decides that they do want to work with you. Lastly is learning tips and tricks on how to improve your strategy. Like Bill said, I've been at this for a few years now. I consider myself an expert on Instagram, and my hope with this is to kind of shrink down all my knowledge and make it a little bit more easy to process for you. So I'm going to start off kind of talking about what brands pay influencers. And if you look on the bottom right-hand side of the screen here, you see this chart that has kind of broken up influencers based on how many followers they have: nano, micro, power, celebrity. I like this chart because it shows that you can have 500, 1,000 followers and still be making money on Instagram. A lot of people think that they have to be in the hundreds of thousands of followers to make any significant money on Instagram. And while it's true that the money goes up as you have more followers, you can be taking advantage of your 1,300 followers if that's what you have. Those are still 1,300 people that are highly targeted, that brands are looking to work with. But more about this chart, I do think it's a little bit of a wide range in terms of, if you look at this power category, it's influencers with 30 to 500,000 followers. That's a big range. I would say that if you're in the hundreds of thousands, you're most likely going to be making more than $500 a post. But like I said, the prices vary based on engagement, demographic info. For example, if you have a lot of New York followers, that's valuable. Essentially just any demographic info that could help the brand execute their ad. So the next thing I want to ask is why focus on Instagram? And I think this is important because the title of this presentation is monetizing your social media. And we're only talking about Instagram on this. And there's a couple of reasons that Instagram is really like the main focus of social media. The first thing is that Instagram is the central hub of kind of the whole internet, in that noteworthy content that it may originate somewhere else, whether it be Twitter, YouTube, Reddit, but if it's really good and if people care about it, it's going to end up on Instagram. And that's important because that means your fans, they're spending the most time on Instagram, they're consuming the majority of their content there, so you should too. But lastly, and this is also important, is that sponsors are really focused on Instagram specifically. And the best way to kind of sum up why is that Instagram gives the most room for creativity. So for example, if you were doing an advertisement on Twitter, you are subjected to 140 characters, and that's all. So the company is likely going to give you some sort of bottled up statement that they've sent out to many other influencers, and it kind of takes away your ability to be unique. And on Instagram, with the image separated by the caption, but also the ability to tie stories and post together, there's a lot of ways to get creative. So that's really why brands like Instagram so much, because creativity works on both sides, both for the brand and for you. Now I'm going to kind of go into the first major category, and that's optimizing your posts for success. And I'm going to start that with a checkpoint. I want to ask you all, are you a creator profile on Instagram? I assume most of you are creator profiles, but it's important to be a creator profile, but even if you are, understand the advantages that it brings to you. So first of all, if you're a creator profile, you get access to detailed analytics. And if that means nothing to you right now, later on in this presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about analytics. And it's really important. Next is displaying your profession at the top of your profile. This is very simple, but having athlete under your name for anyone who just randomly stumbles upon your account, it's important because it shows exactly who you are. Next is the use of the swipe up feature. Now you have to have 10,000 followers at least on Instagram to use this, but you also have to be a creator profile. So I just wanted to list that. If you're under 10,000 followers, it's not the end of the world that you don't have the swipe up, but if you do, it's a nice advantage. It's a nice thing to take advantage of. Lastly is paid partnership posts. So when you execute a brand ad, you want to have it be able to say paid partnership underneath your name, not only because it looks cool, but because it shows your fans that it's paid advertisement, which is both A, kind of the law, and B, it makes you look cool. So there's a lot that goes into that, and basically all you have to do is just before you post, add the brand that you're about to publish with, add them as a business partner, and they accept you. This is like a common thing to do, and then the result is something like that. The next thing I want to talk about is kind of optimizing the actual look of the profile. Now I have the parody profile as an example here on the right-hand side, because I think it's a good general idea of how you can structure your profile. The first is the bio, and that's kind of the main focus of this slide. On the parody profile, you can see we split up kind of two powerful statements describing who we are and what we're doing. We split them up on two different lines. And in your cases, it would be, two-time US national team performer, all ACC, whatever it is, there's something about your career that you can highlight up there. Next thing, and this may sound kind of simple, is putting emojis at the beginning of each of these lines and taking a second to think about what emoji you're going to use that kind of ties into the story that you're telling. And it really adds to the aesthetic, but it also draws eyes to your bio, which is important. And lastly on this slide is icons for your story highlights. As you can see on parody, we just have one story highlight right now, which means, we just have the logo there. But if you have multiple story highlight categories, it's good to have a uniform section where it show, like, you just have text using the same font of what it is or something like that. It can be very simple, but essentially you just don't want like a freeze frame of one of your stories that's hard to tell what's actually in there. The next thing is follower to following ratio. Now, this is another thing that may sound simple, but it's really not nitpicking. It adds to the whole aesthetic of your profile. You don't necessarily have to have some sort of crazy follower to following ratio, but there's a couple guidelines that I like to give just to take a look at. And first, I recommend you follow under 1,000 accounts. Now, if you're following 3,200 accounts right now and that just scared you, it's okay. It's not like the end of the world. But under 1,000 is generally like the best look, and over 1,000 is like, it's a little spammy looking, if that makes sense. In general, and you also want to have more followers than the amount of people you follow. But this is, once again, just kind of a general guideline. You don't have to follow it. It's just kind of an extra step. And lastly, this is something we've talked about, but displaying your career, so athlete under your name. The next thing I want to talk about is executing your ad campaign correctly. So if you look on the right-hand side here, I have a screenshot of, I would call it the ideal posting time window that Instagram gives you. So say, for example, you're about to do this ad with a company. Maybe it's your first ad and you're a little nervous. You want to make sure it goes as well as possible and get it out like at the time that most people are on Instagram. Like, just basically set yourself up for success in as many ways as possible. One of the ways to do this is to go into your insights now that you're a creator profile and scroll down to this section, followers. And basically what it shows you here is how many followers are active in 3-hour windows throughout the day. So if you looked at this and you were me in this situation, you would say, all right, sometime around 3 o'clock seems like is the best possible time to post. Now, again, you don't have to do this. You can post it at 8 a.m. and there's a good chance most of those people will see it, but for like immediate impact and just kind of to quell your nerves, it's a good thing to do. The next thing is ad placement. So first of all, you just want to make sure it fits your feed. And you can accomplish that by matching the aesthetic, making sure it's a high quality image. But most importantly, you have to double check all requirements before posting. And I say this as someone who's had to learn from this, is that when you do a brand partnership and you're linked with the brand on Instagram, they have the ability to right away promote your post on Instagram. And when that happens, it locks in what you've written, you can't edit it at all. So once they do that, there's no going back. So you want to make sure there's no errors, because if there's a typo in the caption, they didn't notice it, you didn't notice it, then it's locked in for the whole duration of the advertisement. So that's an important thing to just keep in mind. Now I want to talk about hashtag optimization. And I want to start this by just saying you don't need to be using hashtags if you have a big following or you're not really interested in like gaining more followers. You don't need to do it. But if that does sound interesting to you, hashtags are like the best organic way to accomplish that. So first, you want to find 3 to 5 hashtags that are fitting to the content of the post. So on the bottom right, you can see I picked a good example, which is hashtag female athletes. And that's a good example because it falls between 50 and 500,000 recent posts. You can see 67,000. And that's just like a general window. But basically, the idea is if you post to a hashtag that's under 50,000, like low, it's really just not enough attention for it to be worth the time. And if it's like a hashtag that has millions of posts every week, it's so saturated that it's probably not going to be seen anyone, even if it does well. So that's like a really good in between 50,000 to 500,000. It could be 40, it could be 600. It's just like a general range. And also the 3 to 5 hashtags, I just want to say, you can use up to 30 and no one's stopping you. The one thing that I like to tell people is that using a lot of hashtags, it may help, but it makes your page look worse. It makes the posts look a little spammy. And I really think the sweet spot is 3 to 5 hashtags. So once you have these hashtags, you're going to write your caption up, however you normally do it, make it connect with the audience, and bury the hashtags at the bottom. But there's an issue on Instagram in where if you write multiple paragraphs and you have like line breaks breaking up the paragraphs, Once you post to Instagram, it gets rid of that line break, and then it just comes out as like a jumbled mess and it looks terrible. So the way around this, and it's linked here on the slide that'll be emailed to you after this, it's the Instagram line break generator. It's just this easy website tool that you paste your caption in when it's done, and just copy from there, and it makes it fully set up in the way that you want it, with the line breaks and the hashtags at the very bottom. And it's very important. So make sure you check out that tool the next time you post, because it's a game changer. Next, very quickly, I just want to tell you how to add a brand as a partner, because I mentioned it before. So once you go through the posting process, like you pick the image, you write the caption. On the bottom, there's an advanced settings button. So you just hit this advanced settings button, hit tap business partner, and you add the company that you're working with. They'll see the notification and they will know to do that. It's very industry standard to have this type of setup. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Kara Winger, who is a Olympian javelin thrower, who's going to kind of give a rundown of her really well executed post from last couple weeks ago.
So Kara wasn't able to make it today, but we ran the contest, so we'll give a little bit of background on what went really well with Kara's post. So as background, this is a campaign that we ran as part of Parity. We had probably 15 athletes who worked with our client Group 1001, and the prompt was to make an Instagram post of one of the 4 pillars that Group 1001 believes in. So they're community, power of sports, technology, or innovation, and each of our athletes had the option of picking which pillar resonated with them the most, and were asked to write a short caption encapsulating what it meant to them. And so Kara posted on innovation. She's obviously a very accomplished javelin thrower, and she put a lot of thought into her post and posted about this backyard javelin cable system that her husband had built for her. And if you follow Kara at all, and if you don't, I suggest you do, she does a really good job of conveying her authenticity by sharing bits of her life that she feels totally comfortable sharing. So the constant players are her husband, who she tagged, her dog, who's in the photo, and combined with the really thoughtful content of the post, you could see that she had incredible engagement. And I think, Tommy, you're going to get to the punchline, which is you've never even seen engagement of 18%, which is amazing. If you don't mind flipping to the next slide. So this is just a compare and contrast, and why we're so excited about Parity. A lot of people think, influencer, and they think of the LeBron Jameses or the Kim Kardashians of the world. And this comparison between the 2 athletes, between Kara and another athlete that we had participate, really highlights why we're so excited about working with female athletes, right? So on first glance, you could say, oh, this athlete who had over 100,000 followers is so much more valuable to a brand, as opposed to Kara, who has 6,000. But engagement and how much thought you put into the post really matters. And so we wanted to highlight this particular comparison, because even though the athlete on the left had over 100,000 followers and Kara had 6, you could see that Kara's post actually generated more comments and more likes, which is awesome, right? And so you do tend to see this relationship where the more followers you have, the lower your engagement rate will be. But this is just to say that, in that micro or even in the nano category, a lot of brands are really excited about working with influencers, because you can get a lot of engagement, because the people who follow you, when you have 5,000 to 10,000 followers, are people who really know you or want to know you and are actually interested in what you're posting. Tommy, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say just an extra kind of comment on this is that you can see under Kara's profile, it shows that her average engagement is 7.3%, which we'll get into that later, but it's like a really good engagement. But a really interesting thing to look at is that Kara's engagement on this post was 18%, so more than double of her average post. And from my view, like when I run an ad on one of my pages, I'm hoping for like 50 to 60% of average engagement on regular posts. So the fact that she got more engagement is just something to point out as like it's not just that she has less followers and you know, it's easier to have higher engagement. Like people like specifically really liked her executed ad. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. So the next thing I want to talk about is after post, key ideas on building your brand. The first thing is interacting with your followers. Now, I know many of you may have a lot of followers, which means a lot of messages. I'm in the same boat, but there are some ways that you can kind of manage your followers in an optimal way where the thing to say is that benefits are not temporary from interacting with the followers. So if you get a comment on your Instagram from a follower talking about how much they liked your post or how big of a fan they are of you, you may think if you reply, it's just like a one-day benefit, but really it's encouraging them to stay engaged with you forever. And it's also encouraging other people to engage with you because they see you replying. So that's the first thing about interacting with followers, but also in your actual DMs, I think it's important to just kind of, even if you've let them get away from you, you have a lot of unread ones, I think it's important to just kind of scroll through, see if there are any like keywords of like people who really care about you that just kind of stick out and reply to those. And the other thing that you can do to make sure no like brand DMs or anything like that get lost is that you can sort your unopened messages by how many followers people have. So that's a good way to sort to the top, but then also, you know, appreciating the people with, you know, it doesn't matter how many followers they have, it just matters that they're big fans of you. Next is posting, like I want to talk about the posting frequency. So I really like flashbacks, like I said in the beginning, which means just using your impressive careers to your advantage. And also just brands are looking for active posters. So I recommend you posting once every other day. If it's every day, that's fine. If it's every 3 days, that's okay too. But in general, if a brand is looking to advertise with you and you haven't posted in 3 weeks, that's kind of a red flag to them that it might not be a good idea. So it's good to keep like a somewhat constant stream of content. Once again, it doesn't have to be an exact schedule. It's just like the idea of being present often, but also not too present. Now I want to talk a little more about engagement rate. So if you were lost before when I was saying engagement rate is just the percentage of followers who engage with your content, which means, you know, likes and comments divided by number of followers. And brands are looking for 1 to 3% engagement, roughly. Like 1% is the bare minimum, like not that thrilled about it, but we'll go through with it. 3% is like you have strong engagement, and 5% is like a very successful page. So if you're anything over there, you should be very happy right now, and it means you have a valuable page no matter how many followers you have. And why is that important? It's because it's the brand's number one focus. You can buy fake followers online right now, but brands will be able to sniff it out because the engagement won't match up. It'll look inauthentic. So really, engagement is the number one like metric they're looking at to define your value. Lastly, ways to increase your engagement. Like I said before, interacting with fans is key, but also asking an action-driven question in your caption. Like if you put up a picture today and just ask something about the quarantine, like you don't have to do that. It's an additional way to encourage engagement if you're kind of worrying about it. I don't normally do that on my pages, but I know a lot of influencers do that, so I wanted to mention it. Now I just want to run through the insights, the individual metrics, and this is accessible on each of your posts. I want to start by saying, don't live in the insight section. So I obviously spend a lot of time looking at these insights because it's what I do for a living, but it can kind of get a little obsessive for anyone. So I just want to lead this by saying, like, really just at the end of each week, look through your posts and see how they did. This is not like that big of a time commitment, but it is important to look at it and understand what's going on. So first, this is just like the basic screenshot. As you see, top left, we just have likes and comments. Those are the, you know, simplest ways of showing your approval. But the paper airplane one is a little more important to me, and that's how many people sent the post to group chats. So this is a screenshot from like my comedy account. So the number is kind of inflated. If you have really a dozen people doing that, like that means you did really well. And saves is the same kind of idea. It's people saving your thing so they can come back and look your post so they can come back and look at it later, which is really to me like the ultimate sign that the post is good because they don't want to lose it. Bottom left is profile visits. So that's how many people saw your post, got a little bit interested in you and clicked your profile. And then bottom right is just the total number of people it reached. Now here's the more advanced info. I want to direct your attention to the middle of the screenshot on the right side. The first thing I want to mention is the 8% weren't following you. That is like, of all the metrics, possibly the most important one to look at to kind of understand where your post is going. More often than not, when you post, it'll be 0 to 1% of people who viewed the post weren't following you. When my pages are public, that's what it looks like. But when something really goes right, it starts elevating, and it can go up all the way up to 99% weren't following you. And it just shows you on the bottom a breakdown of where people are coming from if they're not following you. Are they coming from hashtags? Are they coming from the explore page, etc.? So I just wanted to make sure that you had an understanding of that. And the key takeaway here is just that each of these metrics, it has a unique story about how the post performed. You can have a different takeaway from it, and different posts have different metrics that should be focused on. With that, that's the end of my presentation. I'd like to open the floor and encourage questions. And also, if you have more specific questions, please feel free to email me, tommy@eos.coach, and I'm happy to reply to your questions.
Any questions?
This is Shannon. I had a question about the paid partnerships. I have only had a couple instances thus far where it was applicable, but I found that when it came time, so for me, I had always waited until it came time to make the post, and then I put in the request to try to tag the business, but then the business didn't approve it like immediately. One time, I don't know if they ever did. So I'm just looking for advice on maybe a more efficient way to manage that paid partnership situation.
That's a really good question, and I'm happy you asked it. The answer is that you should do it a couple days before. I personally have never had an agreement that was executed the day before. So what I'm saying is, like, usually there's a couple weeks leading up to your post, and you can handle that beforehand. So yeah, it makes sense if you do it at the last second. Like, whoever runs their Instagram account isn't on it, whatever it is. Just if you handle it a couple days in advance, they'll definitely do it. It's literally like one click on the side of the brand to accept that, and helps both sides. So yeah, I would just make sure you ask a couple days in advance.
Can you do it? How do you put in that request? Like, I've always only done it tagging when I was actually creating the post. So how do you go through that process in advance
right,
without actually making the post?
So you can go through that process in the post and just not post it. Like it's the process is finalized when you hit add in that process, if that makes sense. They'll get the notification even if you don't post. So you just go start to post, write it up, and then add it as a partner, and then just go back. You can save it as your drafts and post it later.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Tommy, I have a question. How do you
Sure.
think about the right ratio of like your regular posts versus paid posts?
It's a good question, and that's kind of like my answer to that question is kind of something that I was talking about a few minutes ago in like posting frequency. Like one of the main reasons that posting often is important is that it kind of buries the ads. But there's no like standard number that you should be doing. It's just like an idea. You don't want every post to be sponsored. But at the same time, I think if you went to Kendall Jenner's Instagram, like 85% of the posts are sponsored ads. So it's, if they're done well, because she, you know, her ads are executed at like the highest level, like if they're done well, it's not a huge deal, but in general, like you want to do your best to space them out. I guess that would be my answer.
All right. Well, look, we thank you each for coming, and we hope that you participate in future free webinars. As we were saying, we're doing this because we really believe in the female professional athlete, and we want to help as much as we can in this crisis. We encourage you to reach out to Tommy with any specific questions. We also encourage you to follow us at Parity Now on our Instagram. So thanks again, and hope to hear from you all soon in the future. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.